Part IV, Chapter 4 of Short History of the Christian Church by John Fletcher Hurst. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 4, The English Puritans. The early church revolt against Rome was the real origin of the later Puritans and all of the non-conforming bodies of England. In the 14th century there had been strong tendencies among the more devout to protest against all superstitions and ritualistic practices. The movement crystallized in the Lollards, under Wycliffe as leader. When the Reformation on the Continent was in full force, these people, who seemed to see in the new Protestant Church which Henry VIII would give to England but little improvement on that of Rome, organized themselves into a society which bore the name of the Christian Brethren. They did not break with the established church, but held themselves in reserve to await events. Cambridge became their chief centre, but the movement soon extended to Oxford. The sources of Puritan strength were very important, and were to be found for the most part on the Continent. The writings of Luther and Melanchthon were translated into English and read with avidity. Calvin, by an industrious correspondence, was of most valuable service. He boldly wrote to the king, and to the Protector Somerset, and to Cranmer. His letters furnished powerful artillery for the Puritan campaign. Erasmus lived some time in Cambridge, and the weight of his influence, though without purpose, was with the Puritans. The prestige of foreign reformers led to their being called to both the English universities. Peter Martyr, the Pietro Vermigli of Italy, became a theological professor at Oxford; Martin Bucer, of Switzerland, at Cambridge; and Ochino, of Italy, a canon of Canterbury. The indirect result of all these foreigners in England was against all the prelatical and ritualistic tendencies in the Church of England as organized by Henry VIII, and wrested from Rome by him as king. Edward VI gave all promise of favoring a simple ritual, and granting to the Puritans a full recognition. But he died after a short reign. Mary succeeded him. She aimed at the total overthrow of Protestantism. Death or banishment of all leading Protestants was the new order. Elizabeth succeeded her, and followed closely in the path of Henry VIII. The return of the exiles was a powerful accession to the Puritan party. Banishment had taken them to Geneva, Frankfort, and other continental cities, where their associations were with the Reformed, and where they adopted all the tastes of Calvin. Fuller says, "They brought nothing back with them but much learning and some experience." They no sooner landed in England than they began a vigorous fight against what they believed to be the fearful formalism of the Church of England. The thing which they attacked with most vigor was the robes, or habits, worn by the clergy. The strife bears the name of the Habits Controversy. The Protestants declared that the compulsion to wear a certain kind of vestment was a violation of true liberty, and was nothing less than a continuance of Romanism. The strife was bitter, but the term was a misnomer. Behind the protest against a certain robe was the entire mass of ceremonials which the Puritans opposed. In 1662 the Act of Uniformity was passed, which gave the Puritans no chance. According to this act, all ministers must use the Book of Common Prayer, and must declare their public assent to the same book. A like assent was required of all heads of colleges and schoolmasters. It was a bold attempt to banish all dissent and liberty of worship in the kingdom. As a consequence, more than 2,000 ministers were turned out of their parishes. They were thenceforward called, in many cases, by the broader term of nonconformists. In 1566 they formed themselves into a separate body, and boldly advocated the throwing off of surplices and all the ceremonial reminders of the Church of England. The Queen and her Parliament resisted every measure adopted by the nonconformists. A Presbyterian church was organized, in Surrey, near London, in 1572, but was suppressed. The new High Court of Commission was the government's formal method of dealing with all Puritan measures. Their meetings were broken up, their books were prohibited, and imprisonment became the order. Robert Brown was one of the most ardent Puritans. His followers were called Brownists. They were driven out of the country, settled in Holland, and became the nucleus of the Pilgrim Fathers who landed in New England in 1620. End of chapter 4.